Hello, I'm Dimiter, and welcome to another session of Architectural Concept Design with Blender. In this lesson, we'll continue to set up the context with more advanced functions. We'll revisit the array modifier and combine it with a curve modifier to quickly create a fence. We'll also observe how we can reuse an initial driver geometry for many objects. And finally, we'll create trees. So the first thing we want to do is actually enable another add-on for trees, and I'm putting this in the beginning of the video in case you want to come back to this video. You can reference it. So File, User Preferences, Add-ons tab, install from file, and find the location in which you saved the curve sapling add-on with the link that I provided to you below. So downloads, add curve sapling tree. So we click on the zip file, install from file. So then if we search for sapling, if it doesn't come automatically, we see we already have one. This is the default sapling add-on for trees that Blender has. And this is actually by the same developer and another person, but with updates. So we need add curve sapling tree enabled. Save user settings, close the window, and we'll go into it later. So now, if we go to top view, turn on the layer that has our context, and actually I'll just select only it by just clicking with it once. If we change the viewport shading to texture, so we have a park here in the middle, or rather a garden. That we can see is a circle. So click somewhere at around the middle with the right mouse button to place the manipulator. Shift A, curve, circle. And let's scale that until about the right size. G for move. Make sure you're in top order so we only move along the X and the Y planes. So that looks about correct. I'll just apply the scale object, apply scale, so it changes to 1, 1, 1. Let's make that window a little bit smaller. Okay, so we'll draw the fence. Now to draw the fence, we'll use a reference image. We'll actually load it within Blender's interface, so it's easier for us to observe it and reference it. So let's make this window here a little bit bigger. And we can change each window type to another window type with this icon in either the top or the bottom left hand corner. So for these windows, it's in the top. And for the 3D view window and the timeline, it's on the bottom. So let's go to this outliner view, select this window and change it to UV image editor. And then if you don't see the whole menu, you can either enlarge it slightly, or with the middle mouse button, you can drag into this menu as well. So click open, and then go in my folder and load some reference images. In particular, I would like to see this image here. So open image. And now we see we have the image loaded here, which is very easy for us to reference quickly. Right. So the first thing we're going to model now is one of these hooks here. So I'll go to a new layer. Let's say layer 2. Place the cursor, well, it doesn't matter, we can keep the cursor here. Shift A for mesh. We'll add a circle this time. And if we toggle the tool shelf, we can see we have a few commands. Again, this bottom part here shows properties for the previous operation that we have done, so we can dynamically modify it. Let's change the vertices to 16. and the radius to 0.02. These are quite thin, so we'll make them quite thin. In fact, maybe 0.015. So that's 15 mil or 1.5 centimeters for radius. We'll fill it with an angon. Okay, so now we have the bottom of this piece here. So now if we go into 3D view, edit mode, Control 6 just to zoom in, because it's getting a little bit hard to zoom into it. And you can see it's quite small and it looks like my viewport is clipping it. So in the properties shelf, under the view tab, you can change the clip from 0.01, which is 10 centimeters, to 1 centimeter. And now you can see we can zoom in a lot closer before it starts to clip. Okay, so while in edit mode, we can select the face, E for extrude. Now when we extrude faces, they automatically lock to the normal direction. So let's just undo this and do a quick test. I'll rotate this slightly, do extrude, and you can see how it goes along the normal direction of the face. Okay, undo this, now we're straight. So extrude. Now there's some people in this image here, and it looks like the fence is about 2 meters tall, and this bottom piece here is maybe another half a meter, maybe a little bit less, 20 centimeters and 20 centimeters. So make our fence 2 meters, and maybe to this point it's about 1.85 meters, and then we have 15 centimeters for this top part. So that's why I didn't care exactly where I extruded this. So now if we go to the Z value in the tools properties, in the properties shelf, and we change that to 1.85, we can see put it quite a bit high. That's exactly where we want it, around that area. So if I extrude again now, E for extrude, extrude slightly, scale. We're drawing now this middle bit here. In fact, I want to do this. So E for extrude, escape, and that keeps it exactly in the same place, but it is a new set of faces between the two edges. So now we can scale where we can see what we've created. I will extrude this again. Something like this. Extrude. We can see we can move it up. I'll hit escape again. Scale to scale it slightly. Extrude up. And now we can start modeling these bits here. So if we extrude again, we'll just slightly scale this now. Or shift click in the transform manipulators if it's not already enabled. And we'll just scale it slightly in that direction, slightly in this direction. And maybe it looks like those vertices are just slightly out. But again, I wouldn't worry too much about it because that's not our main priority. I disabled my manipulator, by the way, with control space. Now I'm enabling it with control space, or again we can just use this this menu item here. So let's just make this like this. So back to face select, select this face, extrude, put it somewhere over there. We scale it in the different axes, move it slightly up. And now we have this piece here. Now it looks like based on the scale of this, let's go to front view. See the whole piece. And if I go to object mode just to see it without being selected about the proportions of it, I think we can loop select these sets of edges here by alt clicking. Well, we have to be in edge mode first. Alt click, and it selects, went away, Control 6 to zoom back in. It selects the whole loop. So now I can just move it out slightly. Right. Okay, that's good enough. So we have this edge here. The last thing we'll do, you can see how it renders. We can see all the lines. So in tools, if we scroll down, we see shading. We just hit, well, let's select the object, smooth shading, and then it becomes smooth. And we can also, if we go and into face mode, alt click to select all these faces. We'll alt click to select all these faces and these faces. And if we tap, actually, let's go to edge mode instead. So let's select this edge by alt clicking, and this edge, actually shift click to select both of them. We go to mesh edges, mark sharp, and we can see they're a little bit sharper than they were before. So we can control exactly which faces or edges are sharp or not sharp, beyond just controlling the smoothness and the flatness in object mode. Okay, so let's go to top view now. And we'll add a modifier, the array modifier. We'll change the spacing from relative to constant. And let's use 0.1, so 10 centimeters. Let's try 0.15. 0.18. That looks about right. So just add a few of those. Okay, so the next piece we'll model is this piece, which is the support. And it's in many ways it's simpler because it's a square. Let's disable this modifier. Let's copy this object. Let's start with it because we have a base and we reuse the top piece. So copy it anywhere. Onto this copied object, we'll disable the array modifier. Let's close these menus for now. And go into edit mode. And if we go into wireframe mode to make sure we can view everything, select vertices and select all of these vertices, X, delete vertices, and we can see we have only the top part now. Now I'll put my cursor exactly at that point, the origin point. So for that we need to go back into object mode, object, snap, and we can see shortcuts are always listed next to the menu items. So I'll use Shift S instead. Cursor to select it. That puts our cursor exactly there. Now if we go back into edit mode, we can also add objects in edit mode, but they have to be of the same type. So Shift A for add, and we can see we can only add meshes. So I'll add a plane. Let's pull out this toolbar here. So change the settings of the previous operation we did, which was add a plane. We'll change the radius to 0.05. And that's essentially the distance from this point to the edge. Okay. And now we will extrude it exactly to that point there. Now, how do we know it's exactly aligned? We can enable our snaps, which is this magnet icon here. And we will change the type to vertex. So with the plane selected, in fact, I think it needs to be a little bit smaller. So scale to 0.5 to have the size. So now extrude. And when we get close to one of those edges, it automatically snaps. So if we go to front view, let's just compare the sizes, and it doesn't look like it's again as thick as I have it. So I'll scale these top edges separately and these top edges separately, so we only scale them in the X and Y direction without the Z direction. So let's scale it to 0.5 again. So S button 0.5. Make sure you go into wireframe to select the front and the back, and we just drag a window. When we drag a window without pressing shift, it deselects everything else. S to scale 0.5. Right? That's about right. Okay. And we also have this support here in the back. And we also can see that this goes slightly lower. So if I go to the front menu, edit mode, let's move these about 10 centimeters down. 0.1. So I type 0.1 with the keyboard and then press the minus key to toggle whether it's in the positive or the negative direction, and we can press the minus key at any point. It doesn't need to be exactly in the beginning. Okay, so now we have it where we want to. So now we use this bottom face to actually recreate this object here. So we place the cursor exactly at the midpoint of this segment and use that pivot point to rotate this face 90 degrees. So let's go to edge mode, select that edge, Shift S for the snaps menu, cursor to select it. And again, if you don't want to use the shortcut just yet, if you go to mesh, and here's the snap menu. So now select the face, change the pivot point to 3D cursor, Shift D to duplicate. We'll press escape and now rotate, and we'll lock it against the x-axis by just pressing X and type 90. So now our face is exactly adjacent to this face and rotated exactly 90 degrees. So let's change this pivot point back to medium point and move this up. So that looks like, let's go to front view to be about there. Now I have snaps modified. I'll just turn them off because I don't need them at the moment. So it's a little bit higher. So let's just say about there. Okay, so now let's extrude. Let's move this face a little bit higher. We'll do the same thing that we did there. Shift D, escape. Before that, let's go into edge mode. So Control Tab is once again the same shortcut for getting these menus. Select this edge, Shift S, cursor to select it, go into face selection, select this face, Shift D, escape to keep it exactly in the same place. Now rotate along the x-axis. And I forgot to change the pivot point to the 3D cursor. So now it's changed. Rotate along the x-axis by pressing X, 90. And this time, minus 90. Okay, so that's our bottom piece. So we'll put that a little bit above 0. So let's say 0.1. So still quite high. Let's change the medium point. And we'll move it along this axis. It's right about there. So now we'll bridge between these two. And for sake of easiness, I'll slide this edge slightly down. And this edge slightly down. So we'll go to face select. Select the two faces. W for the specials menu, bridge edge loops. Now we bridge between these two. It looks actually slightly different. So maybe we erase these vertices and we bridge directly between that one and that one. So X, while we have the face selected, delete vertices. So now we see, I also had that one selected. So let's just make sure that this one is selected. X, vertices. So now if we select this and this face, W for specials, bridge edge loops. So now we have that loop. Let's go to side view. Select this item, extrude, and we can snap to that point. As you can see, if we drag up and down in one axis and we go near a specific item that we want to snap to, and it snaps to it. We can see that the proportions of this in this direction and here are slightly different. So if I go to vertex, select these vertices. Let's move this up slightly. And let's select these vertices. Move them in slightly. So now it looks more or less perpendicular. Again, we're not too worried about 100% precision because that's not our main focus. Okay, so let's name this object railing end. Let's name this object railing. So if I move this out of the way, we go back to railing. We enable the view of the array modifier. We can see what it does. Now the really cool thing about the array modifier is that it allows us to put caps on, which could be quite useful for example, if we wanted, we could have had this item as a cap on a continuous object, but we can also do the same for non-continuous objects. So for end cap, we'll select railing end. We can see that it puts that item exactly at the end. So if we change this, the last one is still this item here. And obviously if we go and edit this object, this end cap will change as well. So now that we have this array, if we add another array, we can see we get multiple links to the fence. Let's just change. Let's make this bigger so you can see better. So this is our first array here. We have right now 16 items. Let's just make them 15 with a constant offset of 1.8, which is the spacing between these items, and an end cap, which is another item, which is a very easy way to control subdivisions. So let's minimize this, and now we've created another array. So this array takes into account the previous array and it multiplies it. And we'll use relative plus our constant of 0.18, And it probably needs to be half of that size. Yes. So we have 0.18 on one side and 0.18 on the other side. So relative just makes sure that this item is exactly the distance of the previous, and it adds a little bit more to it. So once again, if we change the count in the first array, it adapts into all of them, and now we can make a series of those. Okay, so now we have our array exactly like we wanted to. So if we go to top view and we turn on, let's see, which layer do we put? We put the circle in here where the satellite image is. So we'll to the fence we will add a circle modifier now as well. So if we go all the way up in the modifiers menu, add modifier, curve, which will be all the way on the bottom, and we change the object to Bezier curve, and we can see how it rotates, which is great, except something is out of size. So the scale of this is 1, which is fine, and the scale of this is 1, which is fine. Right, so what we need to do is make sure that this object, its center point, well, that shouldn't matter. Just see what's up here. Okay, so if we press array again, let's just see what happens with the curve. Scale significantly up. So if we scale this object, we can see that this item scales. Let me just try with another circle really quickly. So Shift A, circle, scale it up. If I select this object, go to Bezier circle 2. Right, so actually in this instance, we did not need to apply the modifier. Okay, so we erase the first circle. And we can see our fence now. If we want to get smoother with zooming in and out, instead of scrolling up or down, if we hold the middle mouse button with control, it also scrolls up in and out. So now we can see that the fence is facing the wrong way. To change that, if we have the center circle selected, object mode, and we go into edit mode, and in this menu here in the tool shelf, switch direction, go back into object mode, and we can see our fence now is facing the correct way. Let's just make sure that this is not making things smaller, and it isn't. Okay, so let's just complete the circle now by adding more of these. Great, so now we have a full fence. So the last bit we're going to do is add a few trees. As you can see in this image, there's quite a few trees. And let's open another image with this icon. And I have an image called trees, which is a bird's eye view, which shows the trees in winter time so we can see more or less where they're located. Now they're maples, so if you remember in the beginning of this tutorial we enabled the sapling add-on. So if you press Shift A, let's go to a new layer. Let's go to this layer. So we have our fence here. So in this layer, Shift A, add curve, add tree. And we have this menu that comes up here. Let me just close this window. So if we scroll the way down, we have presets, load preset, and let's use small maple. We can see the maple tree. And we'll add leaves to it. So if we go into the leaves, show leaves. If we go to branch growth, or rather branch splitting, we add another level of branch splitting, which adds quite a few more trees. Now this is fairly heavy geometry because all of it is quite well detailed. So in this case, we're going to be pushing the limit of this opportunity because we have about 7 or 8 trees. To make it simpler, we can just remove a level and keep these for visual satisfaction. In fact, that's what we'll do. We keep it to this level because we don't need to get into that much detail. Okay, so now we have our tree, which is located there. So if we turn on our fence and we turn on our context plus the buildings, those trees are fairly high. So let's scale the tree. Let's go into Z mode, and the tree is composed of 2 elements. It's the leaves plus the branches. So when we scale, make sure we have both of them selected. Right, so scale to about, let's try first 2. Control 6 to zoom extents. And I know that it needs to be just a little bit larger. I have tabs enabled, which is giving me funny results. So let's disable it and scale to right about there. And that's a little bit too large. Something like this. Okay. So G for duplicate, for move. We'll do Alt D now, which is duplicated links. So Alt D to move these around. So in case we change one of them, we'll change all of them. And I'll select some of those and slightly rotate them around. Okay, so let's just disable the context for a second and let's do rendered preview. This time it's going to take a little bit longer because once again those trees, they're quite heavy. And now we have our fence, our roads, and we're ready to place our object onto the site. Thank you for watching and see you next time.